Good morning, folks, for joining in. And today's session is more about Azure Kubernetes Service cluster, but it's also more about the security part of it. So it's a workshop. Uh, Feel free to ask questions in the chat. I've muted everyone as of now, but I'll definitely unmute by the end of the session so that you can ask questions to Mamta. Otherwise, just enjoy the session. Please do check in. There is a check-in link and there is an event ID. Please make sure you use those resources. Even if there is no resource there, the check-in will give you, and since you check in with your email ID, the resource we can mail it to you as well. So please do make sure you do the check-in and meet the speaker. Today's speaker Mamta, and there is you know um, nothing to introduce Mamta, but obviously she comes with 17 years of experience. She is amazing at solutioning and building architectures, and talking about it, she's very amazing with her sessions, and great background with DevOps and CI/CD, and obviously with Kubernetes and containers. So do make sure that you ask as many questions as possible to Mamta. And Mamta, over to you. Thank you for joining in for this session, and happy to host you today. I will be at the background. I'll be answering some of the questions if there are questions which I can answer. Otherwise, I'll keep unmuting myself and pushing some of the questions to you. All yours. Stage is yours, Mamta.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Thank you everyone for joining in. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So yeah, hi. Hope everyone is doing safe and excited to spend around 1.5 to 2 hours with me today. We would be discussing about obviously the Kubernetes cluster, but this time the aspect is a bit different. As Vivek mentioned, we would be discussing about security aspects today. We have several other services of Azure which we can make use of to making our cluster much more secure and like implement things with best practices. So we would be talking about Azure Active Directory today. We would be integrating Azure Active Directory with AKS. We would see where exactly it fits in. Then networking, there can be multiple flavors in which we can have a networking setup with the basic KubeNet networking. We can go with Azure's networking, the VNet and all. So that is also there that we would be covering a bit. And then from networking, I actually want to cover network policy, and that's the reason I'll give a brief about the networking. Network policies can be implemented on the Kubernetes level with help of kind network policies, or else we can go ahead and implement policies using Azure policies as well. So we would cover both the aspects. And at the end, we have the Q&A session. So I'll just switch off the camera so that you people can focus on the content and it doesn't distract you. But hi once again. So let's start today's session. So let's first try and understand what exactly we would be doing when we say that we would be integrating Azure Active Directory with our AKS cluster. So this is my AKS service, which is there. This is the worker part of it, which is visible to us. We know that our Azure Kubernetes Service is nothing but a managed cluster, and we don't have access to the master. The cluster's master is residing here. Any type of request when we send from outside the cluster to interact with it, like a developer tries to create a resource, or he or she tries to list the number of pods, or tries to deploy an application. Any type of action when you do, it's actually a request going to the API server. This is the front end for your cluster, we interact with the API server. So suppose, say Mamta is the user and she's trying to delete a resource. Don't you guys think that there should be some mechanism in which we need to first validate if Mamta is a good user, is a valid user? And if she is a valid user, what sort of action she is allowed to perform? Can she really delete the resources, or she is trying to delete the cluster itself? Does she have proper permissions, or I'll say authorization to delete the cluster? So two things comes into picture. One is authentication and another is authorization. Authentication comes when we are trying to validate the user. Validation of the user would be with terms of authentication. And when we say authorization, authorization would be what is she allowed to do in the cluster. So whenever the user is interacting with the AKS cluster with the help of the kubectl command, we normally get logged in. If we have integrated with Azure AD, I'll get a sign in prompt and I will be asked to sign into the Azure portal. That is how I would be authenticated. So Azure AD authentication actually is provided with OpenID Connect. And OpenID Connect is nothing but a identity layer built on top of our Kubernetes cluster itself. And there is a webhook type of thing which gets set up, and we are able to authenticate when the request is coming. So first part would be authentication. Is Mamta a real user belonging to this cluster? We would be creating dummy users. We would be creating clusters and seeing, just telling you what with the flow. When we actually send the request, you would just Vivek, hopefully the voice is clear, right? There are messages saying unable to hear or something. Can you just confirm?
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear.
I can hear. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So user would be interacting with the Azure AD. It's like the kubectl would be using the Azure AD client, and we would be signing it with our using OAuth 2.0. And Azure AD would provide a access token. This access token I'm talking about here, you can see there is an access token given. So our access token is given, and with that access token, we would be calling the kubectl command line interface. And when we are going and interacting with the API server, that is how it is validating us. The webhook, which has been set up between the services, that helps us in validating it. So authentication webhook server is there. There's a server which runs that would confirm that the web token signature which has come with that particular user is a valid one or not. It's a keys are authenticated or not. If that validates, we can go ahead and log in. If there it fails, we would not be allowed to log in. So if this is success, this entire flow is success, then I would be able to log into my cluster. So this process we would be seeing in, we would be setting up our own cluster, and then we would be creating some role assignments and all that, and just try out those how it happens. So here I have logged into my portal. I have opened our Cloud Shells in the bash, and I would be creating a resource group first. So AZ group create command I'll be executing. I'll go ahead and create a resource group named my, say for example, my RG, and I'll give a location to it, say West US. This will create a resource group. In that resource group, I'll be giving my cluster creation request. So AKS create would be the command to create a AKS cluster. I'll give the resource group name, which I've created just in the above mentioned line. And I'll give the name for the cluster, say my cluster. I want to demo role-based access control. What is RBAC that we would discuss? I would enable Azure Active Directory. We are enabling Azure Active Directory. And we would also enable Azure RBAC. What are these two things? One is Active Directory for authentication. One is once the user is authenticated, we can assign them some actions which they can perform in the cluster. That I'm specifying that I would be using role-based access control. Suppose Mamta is assigned the role of a developer, and I have told that developers can create pods, then Mamta would get the authorization to create a bot. So this is the cluster. I'm enabling Azure Active Directory integration. I'm enabling Azure RBAC, and I'm generating the SSH keys. Sorry, create spelling is a typo here on the top. So this looks good. So meantime, when this cluster comes up, what's the role of a webhook? Webhook is like a one which is actually tying up with the, it's the actual place where the validation happens again. It's the actual place where the validation happens. When the API server here, authentication would happen at this place. This is for authentication. You get the token and I take you in. For the authorization, when I'm executing a kubectl command, say kubectl delete command, this is the place wherein we are actually having the database, you can say, that as user Mamta, belonging to dev group, what all actions I can do. And that is authenticated here or authorized here. And the user is authorized or not, that has been defined and responded. So this part is for authentication, and this part is for authorization.
Mamta, there is a question actually.
Yeah.
So, what is the role of a webhook?
Yeah, I was just answering that question only, Vivek.
Okay, perfect.
This was the explanation for that question. So once we are authorized, the API server, this response comes back in, right? So we are allowed to do this set of actions. Exactly how it is implemented in the backend, I'm also not sure. I assume it is part of Active Directory because roles and everything are part of Active Directory. Dev role and Mamta user both belongs to Active Directory, but a hook is being set up so that normally in DevOps, you would have heard webhook between Git and Jenkins. A trigger goes, right? That is called as a webhook. So you can say that one request which goes in, a notification which goes in for the validation, that is like a webhook over here. Coming back to this cluster would take a while to get created. Once this cluster is created, we would go ahead and create our resources. Meantime, by the time this cluster is getting created, I would like to tell you, in case I would have an existing cluster, is there a command to actually go ahead and enable Active Directory, enable RBAC on that. So AKS update is the command with the help of which we can do. You want an existing cluster to have Azure RBAC enabled, then you can go ahead and do that as well. So once the cluster is up, we will have to create some roles in it. We would be having roles created, roles assigned to the user. And that role would be like, I am creating a cluster now. I have this cluster. In this cluster, I'll create a role. A role on the Azure AD level, it would be created. say a role, there are some predefined roles as well. We would be creating role of RBAC admin role for Kubernetes. It is the role name is actually completely Azure Kubernetes Service RBAC admin. And this role can be assigned to a user. So we would have role, we would have user, and we would have whom you're assigning this, whom would be this guy. So role, a user, say user Mamta, and what would be the scope? This is the scope. Scope is my cluster's ID, my AKS cluster's ID. So we would need the complete name of that user with which you can grant permission. You can also grant permission just on a namespace level. So a cluster in any Kubernetes cluster are normally logically divided into namespaces. Say I can create a dev namespace, I can create a test namespace. I don't want Mamta to have reader permission. There is another permission, for example. Say I'll take one more user, say Vivek. Vivek is my second user. I want to make Vivek user as reader, but reader only for dev namespace. This also can be done. I can confine his actions. He will not be able to see anything running in test namespace. I have worker node 1, I have worker node 2. There are some two set of pods running here. The green ones are dev workload and the purple ones are the test workload. When Vivek executes kubectl get pods, he would be executing kubectl get pods only in dev namespace. He has reader permission only for dev namespace. Mamta can do any action because Mamta is an administrator. She would have access to dev and test namespace both. So we would be seeing how we assign this. Let me see if it is created. Yeah, the cluster is created. So let's go and verify that once. My cluster RBAC cluster is created. Let's see how many node cluster it has created. There is one node pool. And in that, it has created a 3-node cluster. Coming back to this. So you can see here, IAM is there. From here, we would be doing a lot of stuff. So I'm just keeping this open. And let's go ahead and create a, first let's get our Kubernetes clusters ID. I'll just change this, the cluster name and my cluster RBAC and M is small. And the resource group name was my RG. That was also with a small m. Let me just change that. So I'm getting the AKS ID, the resource ID of this resource. And now I'll do a role assignment. Mamta user is already existing in this cluster. I'll do a role assignment with AZ role assignment. I would create a role. Role name is this. The role name is this. And I would be assigning it to Mamta. So I would have the username, like this would be my entire username. To fetch the username, I'll go to my Active Directory. I'll go to users, and this is the user. This is the user. So I would use this name and I'll do the assignment. I'll assign it like this and I'll say scope. Scope is my cluster that I would be taking up from this variable. So dollar of AKS ID. So this would assign a role. So where did I get this role from? Let's go to that. So you can see role assignments here. At present, access administrator role we were assigning. You can find several roles over here. These are the roles. I've picked up one role from here. Let me just expand that. These are the default roles. Cluster admin role, cluster user role, contributor role, RBAC admin role, RBAC cluster administrator, and here details are also given. List cluster admin credentials action. So what all things can be done by this particular role, everything is given. So these are the roles. I could have done the assignment from here as well. I could have selected the user and I could have done assignment. You can do role assignment from here as well. I did it from the command line. I can say that Mamta is a RBAC writer. She can write some new rules and create some new permissions for it. I can say I would be assigning it to the user and I would give my credentials and I would say this would be the one who gets added. So I'm adding role assignment. Role is pre-existing. I'm assigning that. If you want to create custom roles as well, you can go ahead and create custom roles. That is also possible. Role assignment is done. You can see here, it is successfully given as an output. That means the role assignment is done. If I want to do it on a namespace level, the scope will a bit different. A bit different scope would be there. So let me find one more user. Yeah.
There is a question on
When
when
to
to
use
use.
RBAC?
Yeah.
That question, Vivek.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's either or Manish. You can use Azure Active Directory based roles if you want. And if you want to rely on Azure's services or features, what services Azure is providing, you want to live with that, then you can go with it. What I feel, we can create granular roles in both the places. So it entirely depends how you want to manage. If you're creating RBAC roles in the cluster, you will have to maintain them in a repository. The files have to be maintained in a repository. They have to be version controls and all. They both do the same thing. It's just that whichever you prefer, you can use either of them. It's not like one is good and one is bad, or one some has some features one doesn't have. By default, some roles are already predefined and kept in both the cases. If you want to use them, or else you can create your defined role as well. So I'll be showing both the flavors. Hope that answers your question. Let me go here and look for a different user. Say user number 11. And show you how to assign permission to it. So I'll just try and edit this. First, let me change the user. And we should have some namespaces predefined, or else we can go ahead and create namespaces. And that namespaces would be like we can use it over here. So let me just show that the role assignment of the previous one has happened, and then we would proceed with this. So this is the role assignment being done, the previous one, because of which Mamta is a user access administrator. She has this permission. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and give a namespace. and name as namespaces, and then say I want it on default namespace, then default names. Default namespace is there by default in all the clusters, so I'm giving it. So in default namespace, I did not make it as admin. I'll make it as RBAC reader. So let me make it this user as a reader for the default namespace. So this guy would have the permission of a reader. So user number 11, I'm making it as a reader. Did I make any mistake in this? Something is missing in the code because of which it didn't work out. Yes. On deleting, I have deleted this. I didn't write it properly. Just give me 1 second, my bad. Yep, this would work. So here, user 11 is a reader. Mamta is a administrator. So I can control who can do what in the cluster. We can also create custom definition roles and we can control them. I have a file here. So I want to create a role, separate role called as AKS deployment reader. I want to make this new role, which would allow users to just be reader on the deployment level. Deployment is a type of resource in our Kubernetes. So there we are doing. You can specify what actions we can do. If you want to deny sub actions, you can also give that. Here, we can go ahead and say in which namespace we want to provide. You can specify here the description is there. Action would be done on whom, what action can be done. And here I would give my subscription ID. If I give the subscription ID here, then only I can go ahead and create it. So let me just go ahead and edit this and show you how to create a role. This is my own role definition. There is no such role existing. So I'll go to my cluster. I will pick up my subscription ID, come back, provide that over here. AKS deployment reader. Let's quickly go and verify that at present, when we have roles, there are no deployment related roles. There are no deployment related roles. So how do we create these roles? We can go ahead and create this role with AZ role definition command. We are defining role on Azure level. I'll say create a role definition from this particular file. A JSON file definition has been provided. So role is created. We can certainly go back and check over there. Let's do that. So it should be available. Here it is right on the top. This role also can be attached to someone. You can see here, this is custom role, which we have defined. This is built-in role, which is pre-existing. So we can go ahead and try accessing resources from here. Sorry, I should have gone to the other tab. So let's get the credentials of our cluster and then see if we are able to access. AKS get credentials is the command. And we would provide the resource group, my RG. Sorry, there has to be a space. And you would provide the name of the cluster, my AKS cluster. I'm fetching the credentials, the kubeconfig credentials, the file which tells us as which user TIALS. I've written tails instead of credentials. So it says my AKS cluster is not found in my RG. Strange. Let me see if my Okay, my cluster RBAC was the name of the cluster. Anywhere I used my AKS cluster, no, right? So why did I use that? I'm not sure. Let me pick up the correct cluster name. There's so many clusters which I've created today. To do the demo, I am myself getting confused. Happens. Yeah. So I can do kubectl get nodes. I can do kubectl get nodes. Here you can see it is saying me login first. So this is the request which is going to Azure Active Directory. It is asking me to log in. I'll give this and then only it will authenticate me. It would authenticate me. It's asking me as which user you want to log in and then continue. Now I've logged in. See what it says? You have logged in, right? Signed in with Azure Kubernetes Service AAD client application onto your device. This is when I've logged in as that user Mamta to whom we had given the permission. So 3 things we learned. We have given access permission on cluster level. We have given access permission on namespace level. Built-in roles are there in Azure AD. We have 2 types of roles. One is built-in roles are there. And then we have defined our custom roles as well. Custom roles as well. So this is how the roles on the Azure Active Directory level can be used. I authenticated Mamta, plus I also allowed Mamta as a user to do some certain set of actions. I can also validate that user number 11. I'm not doing that because I seriously don't remember the password, what I would have set for that user. In the next action, when I'm creating such user, I'll set a password as well. Otherwise, I would have shown you that that guy would have got a reader permission for it. So this is how you do these. So if you are thinking, where am I, like any help documents or something to look into, Microsoft's documentations are pretty amazing. You can always refer back. All roles, everything is being defined. Cluster level roles, what are pre-existing inbuilt roles, everything is given. How to do as well. Few things I had picked up the pictures from here itself. And you have hands-on as well for few of the things you would have how to do it too. So just putting this on the chat so that you people can also refer this later. What are the actions that can be performed by the custom role? Custom role can do kubectl deployment reader. That means get and list. Those are the things the custom role can do. I had given it as a reader permission. You can also specify actions in the Kubernetes cluster, say delete and all. And this particular section, which was there in the file, let me open the file. Here, you can specify the actions. I had given read. That's the reason read is there. Here you can give more actions as well. And any actions or no actions, specifically you want to exclude something, you can specify here as well. So here, because I had given deployment read, it can only read the deployments. So this is about, let's see, difference between actions and data actions in the custom role. So data actions are more granular, like I can say on the namespace level, action on a specific resource type. So resource type would consider to be as the data action. You saw there, deployment read was being mentioned. Deployment star I do, then on that deployment I can do multiple. Actions were empty. I can specify a broader level action on the cluster resource as well in that. And then in the data action, I can confine them to a granular level. That's the difference between the both. So moving on to the next variety, in which we would be using Kubernetes RBAC, and we would be like confining the actions in that resource. How do we do it? Let's do that. We would be integrating Azure Active Directory for creating roles, for creating users and all. But this time, when we control the action, we will not be controlling the action using roles assignment in Active Directory. Rather, roles would be role binding would be done on the Kubernetes level. So authorization is again the parts of Azure AD itself. Authentication is part of Azure AD, sorry, my bad. Authorization would be handed over to Kubernetes RBAC. So let's see how do we do. We already have the cluster, the same cluster I plan to use. So let me see if that variable of AKS ID is valid. Let me fetch the AKS ID once again. This is the one. Cool. So AKS ID is there with us. We would go ahead and create a group this time. So I would create an application developer group in Azure AD. So let me pick the command from the link so that I don't make a typo. I'm making a lot of typo today. So I am going ahead and creating a group on Active Directory. Display name is app dev. Email, nickname, app dev, the object ID we want that we are fetching and providing it to the app variable that I'm doing. So this is going to create a group in Active Directory for application developers. And using this, we would be adding some users to this group next. And then we would see how we would limit them. So I would go ahead and try to echo my own application developer. I'll enter the UPN name for this application developer. Let me go ahead and create a user. It's not exciting. So let me give a principal name here first. I think I had to give that entire name. Let's see if this works out. It's asking me to enter a secure password. I will enter some password which I can remember. Then we will create a user account. We would pass these two things. I somehow feel the name of the user's UPN should be the complete name. What do you guys suggest? This entire name is actually the UPN name. See this? The name is pretty huge for the users. So let me pick up something like this for my user 20. Now I think this will make sense. I have removed that variable and I'm referencing this. I'll add this to the user to that group which I created. So group was saved in this app dev ID and AKS dev ID is the user. I would add that to the app dev group. So what I'm saying, AD group member add to which group? App dev. You can see here, app dev was the name of the group which we had created, whom we are adding as a member. This guy we are adding as a member whom we have created right now. Let's go ahead and do that. The user is created and added to the group. Let's see if we have a user named user 20. Principal name is this. AKS dev is the name. Okay. And let me see the group as well. App dev is the group. Fine. Members of the group. Yeah, this guy is the member of the group. So it's all good. The commands have got executed successfully. Now, credentials I had already fetched up. Let me just go ahead and do kubectl get notes and verify if the variable is still set. So I had mentioned that command, Jayendran. I'll show you that command later. And that command, how do we enable in an existing cluster? I'll show you that in a minute after finishing the scenario. Okay, so let me create a dev resource namespace in the cluster. So this would go ahead and create a namespace. I don't have update role assignment to allow access. Awesome. Mamta doesn't have access. The user cannot create a resource namespace in the API group. So our role was not being defined to create it, and that's the reason it is not allowing me to do that. Let me go back to my primary terminal. And let me go ahead and fetch my credentials here. There, the user is different. That's the reason. I'm not the administrator in it. So -n, I keep forgetting the name of the cluster. This is the name of the cluster. This is the name of the resource group. Yes, I want to override this. And let's try creating the namespace now. Will it still not allow me to do this? I should remove that permission, I think, which I've added. That's the reason it is giving me an error. Let's see. Will it allow me to create a namespace? It's not. Update the role assignment to allow the access. Uh-oh. What do we do? Can I just take up a different cluster and then show this? Or should I go ahead and assign the role to that user? Let me try doing a role assignment. I'll add Mamta as a co-administrator or cluster admin role. MJ demo. And another role assignment which was there. Why it is stopping me, I am also not able to figure out. Amazing. It's not allowing me to do that. What do we do? Okay, let me fetch another cluster and let's try and access that and that. Shouldn't have happened this way. Update role assignment to allow the access. User does not have access to resources in Azure. User ID is this. Whose user ID is this? Let's just, sorry, I'm debugging on the live session. Extremely sorry for it, but something has got screwed up. Got to fix that. Yes, this is Mamta's ID only. What permission this stop me from creating a namespace? I didn't see any other permission here. Let's try it with a different cluster. Let's see. Or let me get admin's credentials once and try. Login as an administrator. This is my admin's credential. And then go ahead and create a dev namespace. It should allow. Okay, awesome. So if you write --admin, it would take me as an administrator. I actually had dual role. So this is going to change. This file is going to change. Sorry if you people might have confused. So if I write last time when I got the credentials, you would have seen I have not written admin. So I was going as that normal user administrator who can add users and all that. I was not having the cluster administrators config file pulled. So this file matters a lot, okay? This file actually tells us to which cluster, as which user context you're going and executing the stuffs. So this file has all the details. If this file is not correct, then you would not be able to execute any actions, or you would not be able to do anything with the cluster. And that's the reason it was not working out, because like a fool, I was not typing with --admin. I had downgraded that user. She was not having a cluster administrator role. I did that, but I didn't write --admin. So whenever you want to get the cluster admin credentials, do remember, don't forget like me of adding this --admin. So now namespace is created. Let me just list it for the safe side. The namespace is there. I'll just fetch in this. Okay, the variable name has come wrongly. This should be there from before. I'm just fetching. Group already is there. I'm just trying to just make sure whatever we did was correct. Users, it's already there. Group is already added. Member ID. This variable is not generated. Cool. I think it should work ahead. Let's give it a try, or else you people can kill me after that. I'll create a role. Let's go ahead and create a role 5. So I would be creating role like this. The way the role is created in Kubernetes is different. The way the role is created in Azure is different. So here we are writing kind role. Kind role specifies the type of object we are trying to create. This is the version in which it was introduced. This is the name of the role, the namespace on which it would be applicable. We have created a dev namespace. So this role is only confined for dev namespace. I can have a role which can be of cluster level. Then the kind would be cluster role, not role at that point in time. And here you can give the APIs on which you can do the actions, like how we have this API. Like that, you have several APIs. Some belong to version 1, some belong to apps, some belong to extensions. There are a lot of different groups of APIs. So we are saying that we should be able to call any API belonging to this group. Empty braces normally means version 1. Version 1. We are not creating a service account and assigning a role here. We are assigning it to the user who is belonging to the Active Directory. Service account comes into picture when two services will work. Okay, I don't know who's the person who's asking the name because the name is coming as guest. So a role actually can be added to or can be attached. When I have a role, in that you have a set of actions which you can do. This we are looking at. We are saying being a dev role, what all actions can you do? That you're specifying here. Then later I will say that I have a user residing in Active Directory. I would assign that user this role. This can be done. Or I'll say there is a group, how we have created a app developer group. I would assign this, sorry, the role to the app developer. Or else you have third, which is called a service account. One service interacting with other service, that time what authorization that service will have, this will define. If I'm saying a service is there, which is using the role of the developer, then the service can do everything. This can be a Azure service. This can be a service which we are creating, like any specific resource we are creating in our Kubernetes cluster, we can associate the service account. This can be associated with resources. This can be associated with resources. This is for humans and humans belonging to a specific group. So all the three things can be the subject to this. It's called as a subject. Who is the subject for this resource? So the API group, wherein I can give the actions, the actions which I can do, that is given in the verb. And here you have given the resources. Some specific API group is also given, like in batch, cron job, jobs, any action I can do, delete, get, I can say update and all that, like apply action, any type of thing. This is just a role saying what you can do. Here subjects is not there. Okay. A multiple roles can be assigned to a user, multiple roles can be assigned to a group. It's just like how we have, right? Normal, when you are getting added to a company, you have a role in that company and they add you to several groups. So you automatically get those things inherited. What all actions that group can perform, you would be able to get that. And you can belong to several groups. You can belong to several roles. Those things are possible. It's exactly like how we do it elsewhere as well. So this is just creating role. If I apply this file, it will go ahead and create a role. It will not go ahead and create binding. So let's go ahead and create a role first. I'm creating a role with this. Your role is created, dev user, full access. I've given star in the action. That's the reason it is called as full access. Now I want to attach this role to the group. Attach this role to the group. For that, what I have to do, I'll first fetch what is the object ID of the group which we had created with this command. AD group show. This group I'm querying for the object ID. This is the object ID. Let me copy this properly. And there is a file which I've already created and kept for the role binding that we would be using. So role I specified there, role just have actions. In role binding section, I will say who will bind to that role. This is kind role binding. And I'm saying role binding name. I'm saying in which namespace it is binded. I'm saying which role would be binded to what subject. Here, there is a group object ID. This we would be replacing with our ID of that group. ID of that group. So here I'm saying that This is the API group kind role. Name of the role is this. That would get attached to a subject called as kind group. If I have a kind user, this is an array. You can see hyphen has been written. It's a list. I can also say kind, say user. I can specify the namespace here as dev, and I can give the name of the user. You can give that the complete UPN name of that user. You can specify, yeah. Or same way, if the kind is service account, then you would write kind. You will say service account. You will specify the namespace and the service account. At present, we are attaching that to the group. So this is my group ID's object ID. Let me just see if there are any questions with respect to this. Yeah, cool. So here I have gone ahead and saved it. Now we will create a role binding. Apply this file changes. Let me again fetch the resources of the cluster and now try to create a resource. Whenever I try to create a resource, I had written admin, I had become admin. Now I'm overwriting the existing configuration file. And when I execute this command, it would actually prompt me for your user. We had created a user, right? So that user's name and credentials we will have to supply now. If we don't give this, then it would not allow us to get into it. So here you will receive a sign-in message again. It is created. Overwriting didn't happen. Let me remove this file. Tested things are not working today. It's not a good day. It is getting created in the dev namespace. And let me try it with a different namespace, say default. It is getting created. It's not prompting me to log in. It's not prompting me to log in. The problem is that. Why didn't the prompt come? When you override this, the prompt should come in. What is it? Why this is behaving? This we do regularly. I don't know what is today. Was the user not created for this cluster or something like that? Let me just try creating one more active one and just give it a try. I'm looking for the new user which I added. Okay, user is not added. I have to take the name extension. That is what I came here for. Let me give in the password as well again, and let's give it a try. It should work. I think I messed up that time because of that admin credential, something like that. So I've created a new user called as appdev1, and I've set the password for that particular user. Let me add the user. Okay, I've set those things. So hopefully this should work. I'll add it as a member to the same group. Group I'm not creating again. Now let me try overriding my cluster context and creating a resource. It's not allowing. It is going ahead and creating it. Sorry, this scenario is not working. It is not prompting me for the message. The login credentials are not coming even if I'm executing this. I'm not sure why. It's taking admin permissions only. Sorry, this part is not working, but actually it should have prompted here, and it has done that every time in the past. I don't know, it is not giving me that signing prompt today. How we had signed in here, right? Same way a sign-in prompt should have prompted up, and it should have asked me to log in. That time, the user which I created, app dev1, I would have logged in as that user. So if I'm doing actions in dev namespace, it should have allowed me. If I would have tried to do action on some other namespaces, like if I would have tried to execute the commands on all different namespaces, it should have actually blocked me from doing that. But somehow I'm still the administrator. It's not understanding that I'm not the administrator for this particular uh, terminal. I don't know. The Cloud Shell is behaving absurd or some mistake I have done during the creation. I'm not sure about that. I tried doing it again, but still not working. One last try I'll give it, or else we will move on to the next one. Sorry for this. If it says it already exists, that means API server approved my request. It took me at Mamta. It's not overwriting the config file. Some trouble with this file. I don't know. I think it's because of Cloud Shell. It's behaving that way, or not sure about it. We'll have to debug. AZ
There is
AKS
one last
update
one.
credentials. AZ AKS update credentials. Let me see what's. Sorry, Vivek, you were saying something. It got overlap.
No, the
No,
same thing
the
with
same thing
whatever
with
you.
whatever you.
Yeah, let me see what.
But that would be
But
a
that would be a
resetting.
resetting.
Updating the credential for this particular user, it would be. Uh, no, I think it should work in case we can give it a try. Let's give it a try. The name of the cluster. name of the resource group. And then we go ahead and give this would be the Active Directory's client's ID. Let's try with that user. You have to give some other parameters as well. Reset. Yeah, correct. So you were correct, Vivek. We will have to reset that user's credentials. This is not for that. So seriously, I don't know why that prompt didn't come up. Okay, I'll not move on to the next one. We would be discussing about the container network interface. So we will go to this. And so two ways we saw for the security on the user level, what a user can do, and is it a valid user? That part was there. Now let's discuss a little bit about our the networking, how we can do. So there are various different options. I'll show here. Multiple options are there. When we create a cluster, in this section, we are just providing what is the name and all that stuff. In the networking section, you have two configuration. Either you live with Kubernetes or you can select Azure CNI. So with Kubernetes, you would get a networking. Let me just show you the Kubernetes networking. So Kubernetes networking would be like this. When I say that this is one worker node, this is one worker node, this is one worker node 2, worker node 1. And then you have pods residing on the bridge interface. They would get IP addresses with this subnet range. These IPs would be belonging to this subnet in the Kubernetes case. It would be belonging to this subnet in the Kubernetes case. This subnet is different. The IP addresses of the servers are different. The virtual machines are different. And this subnet is different. And every node will get a different subnet on the bridge. So what happens? We have the IP addresses for the pod belonging to this Ethernet interface. So you can think that this is your the Linux networking. We have a bridge on the Linux level, and that bridge is connected to our Ethernet interface 0. And this Ethernet interface 0 is of pod A and pod B. Both are hosted to the bridge network. So this bridge has subnet of this, and that's the reason this guy has got .2 and this guy has got .3 IP address. Now, coming to the other node, this range will not repeat anywhere. So this range is 10.244.0.0. This would be 1.0. If I get one more worker node, it would be 2.0. Third, one more worker node, 3.0. Like that, the subnet ranges in every node in the cluster for the bridge would be different. Now imagine your pod A talks to pod B. So source is pod A's IP address. Destination, if it is pod B's IP address. Then pod B's IP address is 10.244.0.3. So when packet originates and comes to the bridge looking at this IP address itself understands that this IP address belongs on my network itself. And it figures out which is the pod and it would forward. Now, when the packet has to go outside, we will have to do the NAT. So imagine this pod A is not now talking to pod C. So destination is going to change. Destination would be 1040, 10.244, 1.3, or sorry, 1.2, my bad, 1.2. So when packet originates from here, looking at this itself, it understands that it is not on my network. So it sends to the host network. And here, this has to go outside the node. So here the NATing is done. On top of this, you can think that there is an encapsulation done. And when the packet actually comes out from here, destination would be the IP address of the end node, not the pod. It would be IP address of the end node. So worker nodes 2 IP would be there encapsulated on top of the actual packet. This is the actual packet in which this destination is mentioned. The packet would go on the network. It would reach here. Again, NATing would happen. This would be removed and this would be the one which would be considered. So it would go to the bridge and bridge knows whose IP address is 10.1.10.244.1.2. Packet would arrive here. These all internal things, the bridges are all private IP addresses, and that's the reason we need NAT. That's the reason we need NAT. And these subnets are automatically picked up in AKS. If you are deploying Kubernetes in your on-premises using KubeADM type of tools and all, you can specify the pod CIDR range. But here, if you select KubeNet, it is automatically taking a IP address range and it would be going ahead and creating it. So that is how the packet flows outside. It would be over like covered or encapsulated with the node's IP address and the packet would be forwarded. So this would be the KubeNet way of doing it. This would be the KubeNet way of doing it. Now, you can have one more type of networking. You can say, I would choose Azure CNI. If you have a network, you can use that network or you can create a new network and you can say, like, I have not given the name and all. That's the reason it is giving me this error. I can specify the service IP address range, the DNS name, the few other stuffs. So this would give me a different type of networking, which would be Azure's networking, which would be Azure's networking. So let's see how does the Azure networking look a bit different. So in Azure CNI, this is different. You can see what's the range. 10.240.0.4 is the IP address of your node. 10.240.0.5 is the IP address of your worker node 2. This is also getting IPs in the same range. This is also getting IPs in the same range. And that's the reason they are directly routable. As if a virtual machine to virtual machine communication, how it happens, it would happen in that way. It would be happening in that way. So these IP addresses are from the VNet range. VNet's range, you see, what is the subnet range of the virtual VNet? So 10.240.0.0/16, all are getting the IPs from the same range. These are the pod IP addresses. So they can communicate with each other. Here, NAT is no more needed. NAT is no more needed. 10.240.0.11 wants to communicate to 10.40.0.32 can go ahead and do that. Same way response back will also come. How a two virtual machine residing on the same network talks, it becomes like that. So here, pods will get the IP addresses from the range of your virtual network itself. And that's the difference between the both. We can also have Calico also in picture. Calico is a container network interface, which is there. That can help us in enhancing few things, like if I go back here, you can see here that I can have implement network policies. Network policies, when I say none, by default, any pod can talk to any pod in the cluster. There is no limitations between them. There is no limitations between them. They can talk to each other freely. They can talk to each other freely. And they, if we have different namespaces also, nothing is limited. No traffic is limited if we don't have network policies. Any pod can talk to any pod. It's like servers are there in the same network. They would be able to communicate with each other. Now, if we want to implement security, we will have to implement network policy. Network policy can be of two types. Azure Policies is one of the services of Azure that we can incorporate, or we can use Calico. When we use Calico, networking will also a little bit go different, and we would have a Calico component running in the cluster. I already have, so how do you select? You can select Azure CNI or Kubernetes with Calico, or Azure CNI with Calico. Either or options are there. Calico is a container network interface which helps us in securing our cluster. We can restrict the communication between pod using this. There was a question, Bharat is asking that can we restrict pod-to-pod communication using service account and roles? Roles are attached to users, roles are attached to groups, roles are attached to service accounts. That confines us what kubectl commands you would be executing. Don't get confused with role-based access and network policies. Network policies would apply on the data plane side. When an application packet goes from pod A to pod B, that we are talking about, Bharat. What you are saying, if I say service account and role, that would be what action, like can one of the resources go ahead and instruct for scaling? Kubectl scale command, will it be able to execute? So that action is different. And pod-to-pod data plane communication is different. Role will come into picture in the control plane side. Hopefully that question is answered. Bharat, just tell me, it's a very huge thing. Okay. So how we have firewall rules? Yes. Configuring NSGs would help that. NSGs would be on the node level, right? If we have NSGs in case of Azure CNI, I would be able to control it. It is within the cluster who can talk to whom that we are confining. The data plane side we are confining. And that can be done with the help of another good tool, I would say. Calico is a very beautiful tool. It helps us in various different ways. And that's the reason Microsoft has integrated that with Azure. Calico provides us with observability, telemetry, with security, implementing network policies and all. Here we are using network policy feature of a Calico. So if Calico is coming into picture and within our cluster, few things are going to change. We would have a Calico component also running in our cluster, and that would change the routing of the packet as well a bit. Let's see that picture and then move on. So this would be for the Calico one. Here 10.44.0.20.3, the interface which comes up would be named with Cali. This is one of the differences. The IP addresses here, I have chosen Azure CNI with Calico. And that's the reason within this subnet range, my IP addresses would be taken to 10.244. Okay, this is the different IP address. Then this is, my bad, this is Kubernetes. This is Kubernetes, not Azure CNI. This is Kubernetes with Calico. If it is Azure CNI with Calico, you would find 1040 ranges here. This is 1044, 10244, right? This is different. 240, if it is there, then it would be Azure CNI. So Kubernetes is the one with which we have this Calico integrated. So here there would be a Calico CNI pod also running. If the communication has to happen within the cluster, within the node, then the communication is pretty simple. It will fall on this and it will go. From this place, it will route. But if it has to go outside, this guy would do that encapsulation and send the packet out. So in every node in the cluster, the Calico component will also run. If the packet has to go outside from here, it would be going for encapsulation and removing of the encapsulation, decapsulation. Hopefully that's the word in English, and it would go back like this. So this component would be the extra, which would be running. Azure CNI Kubernetes doesn't give us a flexibility of defining our network. That's the reason in production, we normally don't use this. Azure CNI gives us the flexibility in AKS to define your ranges and all that. So we normally go with this and we integrate Calico so that we can implement network policies. This would help us creating our network, subnet, and everything. And this would help us in limiting the communication, saying that this guy can't talk to this guy anymore, or this guy would be able to talk to this guy. By default, they can talk to anyone with Azure CNI or Kubernetes. But when I get this into picture, the communication can be like confined to a specific set. That is the one. So let's see how we can do this. So I had created the cluster and kept it because cluster creation takes a bit of time. So I'll take this. I want to display the things. I'll go and fetch the, okay, let me open the Cloud Shell here only. I had set up two node or one node clusters like that. And you can find here kubectl get pods hyphen and kube hyphen system.
Mamta,
This
there
is,
are some questions.
there are questions. Okay. Can we use bash script while a pod is created? Can we run a bash script while a pod is created? What is it? There are a few questions before itself. Can we integrate VNet for this? VNet for which one? Restricting pod-to-pod communication, you mean to say? We do it on the network policy level. It gives us more granular way of defining it. You can, if I'm creating a rule on the network security group level, and I'm putting that, see, NSGs can be attached to a Ethernet interface, that is the NIC, or it can be attached to a subnet in Azure, right? If I attach to the Ethernet interface, it would be just for the virtual machine. You're not creating any rules for the pod level. That is one thing. So if you want to create granular rules on the pod level, the network policy is the solution, not NSGs or the firewall rules which we create in that, the ingress and egress rules which we create. Hope that answers your question. How does telemetry provided by API Gateway Service Mesh and CNI differs? So Calico, you could say that it is a combination of all of them. It helps us in, it has a mesh type of connectivity as well. It is a networking component. It comes with a service mesh at the backend. Plus, it provides observability and telemetry. So it depends what type of networking you're choosing. Like Calico uses BGP protocol. Someone uses different type of protocol. A lot of time we choose a specific tool because we have some limitations. I don't want to go with VGP, I want to go with VXLAN, then my choices would be different. I'll go with, say, Flannel, in case I want to go with VLAN type of protocol and all that. So depending on that, Binu, we would be selecting different tools. All of them give us the same type of telemetry. Telemetry can't be different, but different tools giving different options. That's the only thing. And that's the only problem in DevOps, that there are so many tools in the market, all do very similar type of stuffs, and end of the day our life is difficult. Which one to choose? Which one would be the best, right? So all of them almost does the same part of it. It's most of the time we select the tool dependent on what skill set we have in the team. Sangram, I couldn't understand your question at all. Can we run a bash script while a pod is created? Where do you want to run a bash script? I couldn't get that. If you can just clarify that, that would be helpful. Like in Azure App Service, while we create an app container, we can run OK on a Linux container at the time of creation. So here, when you want to create a container, it entirely depends how you have created the image. If you have given the image and you have specified the primary process, in that you're calling a script to be executed, and yeah, then yes, we can do that. So it entirely depends the image which we are picking up, right? What you are doing as the starting point of the image. That would be image definition. That is no way related to Kubernetes. That is no way related to Azure. That is no way related to AKS. It entirely depends on when you're creating the image of the container, how do we do that? We can customize that for sure, but that would be coming outside the image creation process. So here also you can do it. It's just that the primary process which you are running in the start of the container, in that you would have to configure to run that bash script. So see, system CTL commands, you can use these, and end of the day, these things are going and writing firewall rules only, Sangram. It's not making anything different, okay? It's just that they are giving us a simpler way of doing it. I am a Kubernetes engineer, a administrator, or a guy who is handling a DevOps engineer. I may not know in every operating system how to go on that level and create firewall rule on the OS level, right? Why will I learn that? Being a Kubernetes guy, if I can do it from the top layer, it's the responsibility of the kubelet. It's the responsibility of the container runtime to go and make sure that that IP table rule is getting generated, or the firewall rule is getting generated. These things, what we are saying, the network policy which we would create, that will also end of the day go and create firewall rule. It's not like it will do something unique. How we can stop packets coming in and going out, that's the only means of doing it. Firewall rules. Firewall rule, we want to implement it on the pod level. On the pod is also like a small server, right? Like a mini server. It has operating system in it, and we want to implement some rules. We are saying that if such packet comes, accept. If such packets don't come, like other type of packet comes, just deny. It's all firewall rules only. But we are creating it from the Kubernetes level. That's the reason you might be thinking we are doing something different, but it's actually going and doing the same thing at the back end. Nothing different. Hope that clarifies your stuff. So Bilbaraj is saying we need for making private endpoints or private address spaces so that it's part of our org network and within a dedicated subnet. Yes, here we have an internal subnet for it. And we can create private clusters as well. During that time, you can create that way, the private endpoints or the private address space you can pick up. And that can be within our orgs network. That can be there. We can do that. We can certainly integrate AKS with application gateway as well. By default, it is integrated with our standard load balancer, which is there. When you create the cluster, that time you get an option here. Let me go ahead and show you. Here you have the option, enable HTTP routing. This is the one. You can deploy your own ingress controller as well to run inside your cluster. You want to integrate with the app gateway, you can do it from here itself. By default, standard load balancer is something which is by default integrated. If you select this, then you can integrate the other one as well. You can integrate the other one as well. So let me see what all namespaces are there here in this cluster. Hopefully all questions were answered. Let's move on and see how do I implement the network policy. You can see here there is a namespace called as Calico system, Tigera operator, Tigera they call it as. I normally pronounce their name wrong. So these will help us in implementing the network policy. If we don't have selected, we have selected nones, then these guys will not be there. There are pods running in these namespaces which help us in attaining that network policy implementation. Now, I want to run the backend application. So I have the commands already handy. I'm running a pod, kubectl run, a pod named backend with an image of Nginx Alpine. I've given it as a label as role web app and role backend. I would run that in this development namespace, and I'm exposing port number 80 so that we would be able to see whether we are able to log into it or not. So let's try and create this pod. Pod is created. kubectl get all -n development. So here it is up and running. I'll create one more pod for the test purpose. And we will see whether it is able to access the application or not. Access the application or not. Just give me 1 second. I'll just pick up the command from the link. This is the link I'm following. So I'll just have it on the other screen so that I can pick the command and I don't waste the time in it. Just give me 1 second. So there is a sample thing which has been given. I'm just demoing that. I'll explain this. So I'm giving that link also on the chat. You people too can follow it. So I'll create another dummy one, which would help us in testing our stuffs, So this is going to create one more container. Oh, sorry, the pod in the same namespace. I should get a prompt here. I have interactively logged in. I've given --rm. That means if I exit, it would kill this particular pod. I've picked up an image of Ubuntu. I have named it as network policy, and it is a development namespace. I'm first showing within namespace how we can do it. So if I try to reach my backend, you can see here, service name is backend. Normally the packet, when it gets transmitted, it is from a pod to a service of that other pod, right? So backend pod, when I send the packet, I'll be sending to the service actually. So you can see HTTP backend, it would actually send the packet here. Let's try and access. I'm able to access. I see my welcome to Nginx web page. This is there. Now, if I want to create a network policy, I have already created a file and kept it. Let me exit from here. backend policy.yaml is there. In this, we would limit the traffic. Let's limit the traffic. I'm saying that this is kind network policy, the API version in which network policy was introduced, metadata, the name of the policy, the namespace to which this policy would be applicable, and specification would say the selection on which pod I would be actually applying this policy. That is the pod selector. That is the pod selector. I'm saying this policy would be applicable to all the pods which would be labeled app, web app, and role backend. App, web app, and role backend. If you see in grace, you have empty braces there, empty square braces. So no rule is defined under in grace. So no inbound traffic to this pod would be allowed. All inbound things would be denied. If I have some conditions, allow when this is matching, that is matching, then that traffic would be allowed. By default, every pod can talk to every other pod in the cluster. But as soon as you apply a network policy, only what you allow in that network policy, that alone would work. Apart from that, everything else would be denied. Okay. So here, my rule book or the condition book, you can say the rules which I'm defining, the in-grace rules, there are no rules defined. It's empty square braces. This is for deny all. I would deny all type of traffic, and then we will see how we would edit and add few more things. Let's apply this to our cluster. So kubectl get all -n development. I have the pod, the backend pod, and the backend pod is having the label of app web and role backend, app web and role backend. Let's go ahead and apply this kubectl create -f and give the name of the file. It is created in development namespace, so I'll have to give this. If I just give it without that, it will dump me the things of the default namespace, right? So it is created in development namespace. It is applicable for the pods which are matching this labels. So our pods label is that you can also describe the pod and verify it once. Pod name is backend. Let's pick that. Okay, -n development. This has to be given. kubectl. Let's verify the label once. App, web app, role backend. So cool. The rule is applicable to this at this point in time. Last time when we tried creating that particular pod and we tried accessing our application, it allowed us to do that. Because I had typed exit, that particular pod was deleted. I'm recreating the same pod. I'm recreating the same pod. And this time I will try to execute the same command of reaching the backend pod from here. I'm not getting a response. I didn't get the welcome to Nginx page. I don't see the welcome to Nginx page. The traffic is denied. The traffic is denied because we have applied a network policy to that particular pod. And just because of that, the allow of the traffic has not happened. Let's try and complicate our file a bit. At present, I have denied traffic coming from anywhere and everywhere. Anywhere and everywhere, okay? So that way it will not work, right? It can't talk to any different pod, then how it will happen? We have selective pods and I want that from the front end only allow the packet to come in. Then in that case, let's try and edit our policy file and apply thing. So I'll have in-grace rule. I'll say in-grace, I will allow from. I'll allow from, and I would give a selection. I'll give a selection. I'll say pod selector. I will say this pod selector label should match labels. And I will specify the label. I'll say if a pod is saying that app is web app and the role is front end, then allow. Role is front end, then allow. So here I'm saying this rule is applicable to this pod and it will allow ingress from pods which are labeled app, web app, and role frontend. Okay, that's the rule which we are doing. Policy is already created. We will just go ahead and say apply. Apply the delta changes. Apply the delta changes. Now we will try to run a pod whose label would be app, web app, and it should be role frontend. Let's see. And try and access our application from there. So here, again, getting interactively inside the pods container. Image is the same Ubuntu image I've picked up. Label is, you can see app, web app, and role frontend. It is belonging to development namespace. Welcome to Nginx is visible. This is because we have allowed this traffic. We have allowed this traffic. Apart from this, everything else is denied. So the ingress rule allows traffic with the pods which are just labeled as app, web app, and role frontend. Only this will be sent. Apart from this, anything you create that would be not allowed. Let's try running the same old one. This guy didn't had any label. This is still unable to send traffic to it. This is still unable to send traffic to it. Now let's see a little bit more complicated rules. I can also use namespaces labels to do that. My namespace, I had not labeled it. That's the reason if I try doing it now, it will not work. So first, let me label my namespace. Every resource in Kubernetes can be labeled. Namespace also can be labeled. So in real time also, Krishnendu, your CNI would be just applied as Calico. And after that, you write the network policies as we are doing it. If you go back to on-prem as well. This is how the network policies would be written. There was one more question, just curious to know that what type of file system does AKS implement if such things exist in AKS on persistent storage and non-persistent storage. So we'll come to that. Storage is not the part which we are covering, Sangram. So we can have file system and block storage both, and Azure Block Storage, Azure File System, both can be used. Even third-party storages, plugin drivers, if you implement, that also can be incorporated. Whichever drivers are supported by Kubernetes, that can be picked up. Now let's complicate that file a bit. Conditions can be and odd. Okay, conditions can be and odd. Like, for example, let me copy this 4 lines, 4YY. And I'll paste here. And I'll say app as XYZ, for example. So I am saying allow ingress from pods which are having this label or pods which are having that label. Many times people get confused when it is or, when it is and. It is or when you have hyphens. These are two different conditions. If I just have one hyphen in front of it, like how I'm going to do now. Let me write that namespace selector first and then report selector. So I'll say namespace selector. I labeled my namespace, that's the reason. A namespace label I'll want to match. Match labels. What was the label of the namespace? It was purpose development. This is one condition. If the namespace is purpose development and pod is having label of app frontend, accept the packet. Accept the packet. This is and condition. Whenever you have two conditions like this, which are aligned to each other and they are not two different elements in the list. I mentioned wherever you write hyphen in the YAML coding, it represents a list. This is not a list. If I have just one hyphen, they both belong as the same element in the list. That's the reason it is and. So this is a little bit more complex. I'm giving multiple ingrace rules like namespace selector and pod selector. I'm saying namespace also should be matching and pod's label should be matching. Both the things have to be matching. Let's apply the delta changes and see. A bit lazy to type the command. Let me see. Something is not correct in the file. Let me see what's the error. Small L in match label is troubling me. It's all first word and second word starts with capital. Hopefully it should work now. That was the typo. Yeah, it should apply the delta changes. Yeah, so it's configured. Now, let's go ahead and kubectl get ns. Let me create one more namespace, kubectl create network namespace, one namespace as production. So let me create a pod with production in production namespace. Just see what's the label. Web app and frontend. Label of the pod is matching, but the namespace in which we are creating this pod is production namespace. Let's go ahead and create this. We have landed to the terminal. Let's try accessing. We don't see that welcome to Nginx page. We are not seeing the welcome to Nginx page. That is because traffic will only be allowed if the traffic is coming from the namespace called as development. So let me exit this and see if there is a pod, kubectl get pods -n development. Typo. Front end is not there. Let me create a front end for this. So I'm creating a front end pod with label app web, role front end, and namespace development. Go ahead and create this and try to access this guy. It should run through. Thankfully, this part has worked as expected. So here we are able to see that. So these are few of the things like that. You can do it for the egress as well. You can club in several different conditions as well and try to bring up your stuffs. So you can limit the traffic in this fashion. This would be the way we would be limiting the traffic. Now, there was one more part, which was Azure policy. Azure policies, when you create, right, it takes quite a amount of time for applying those policies. So I'll just show you from where you can create and what are the different policies we can do. You can't certainly go in so granular level with Azure policies and all, but yeah, that is also a way of securing your clusters. You can go ahead and implement Azure policies for limiting it. So I have policies here. There are quite a few number of definitions, the default policies which are there. Several categories are there in which you can write Kubernetes and filter out all Kubernetes policies. You can see here, different policies are there. Kubernetes cluster pod security baseline for Linux-based workloads are there. Then pod security restricting some few stuffs are there. So 8 policies are there here, 5 policies are there. These are inbuilt ones. A lot of stuffs have been defined. You want to use this, you can use this. You want to write your own, how we had defined our own role and all, that sort you can even define it. So here you can see there are multiple of it. Kubernetes cluster should not allow privileged containers. Cluster pod should only use approved host network or port ranges. It should not allow using allowed capabilities like we have privileged access containers, right? You can make it as a privileged container. It can go and modify the kernel parameters of your actual virtual machine, the worker nodes. Or if I allow some capabilities, like I allow it as a system admin capabilities or network admin capabilities, that container would be powerful enough to go and modify the networking of the virtual machine itself. So you can limit them to make our own cluster pretty much more secure. So we can go ahead and assign policies from here itself. You can go ahead, say, assign this policy. You can select whom you want to assign this policy. You can select the subscription. You can select a particular resource group on which you are applying this. And you can say that, yes, I want to apply this on this particular cluster and this resource group. Let me see what was the name of the cluster which I had created. I don't know whether that got created or not. This one could be the possibility. Let's try that out. If any exclusions you want to give, you can give it over here. And you're giving an assignment name. Here you have to enable it. So the policies can be applied with an effect of audit. So it will just say that non-compliant resources are there. If you say deny, then it would deny from creating it as well. If you say audit, it will just go ahead and audit it. You can go ahead and create it. Here, there are some namespaces for exclusions. These are the namespaces for inclusions. Like I want to write it as dev namespace, then I would be able to write the namespace name here. Like development, you want to write it as the development namespace, then go ahead and write development here. You want to write it for production namespace, go and write it over here. So containers which are there with privileged access and all. In this particular namespace, it would not be allowed. Why this is an exclusion? This is an exclusion because these guys anyways need to have those level of access. Otherwise, cluster itself will not function properly. We can create custom policies as well, Bilviraj. And sorry, I think I should address you as Chandan. We can go ahead and create policies on under Azure policy. Our custom policies can be created and you can attach them to any of the resource group to a specific namespaces and all. You can go ahead and do that. So here I'm just saving it. I'll say review and create, and I'll go ahead and create it. The problem is this guy would take 30 minutes minimum to get applied. The problem is that. So this is how you would apply it. Then in that particular namespace, if I'm trying to create a privileged container, let me just show you how do we create a privileged container. Hopefully I have a sample YAML file for that. But this rule would be applicable after a while. It will not be in effect from now. I'll come out from this. So here you are saying privileged set to true. That means this container wants to get privileged access. This container gets the privileged access. Let me create this in development namespace. At present, yes, I have to give namespace name as development. It is creating it. Once this rule is applicable, it would not go ahead and allow us to create it. You can see assignments. It shows here the policy assigned is here, but it would take a bit of time. How will I know that policy is being applied to this cluster? Once the policy is applied, you can look at the constraint templates. There is another kind in Kubernetes which would show there are constraints put in this cluster. So if you have constraint templates shown up here, at present, there are no constraint templates. Automatically, that would be actually at the backend Azure policy taking up 20, 20, 25, 30 minutes. It actually says somewhere 20 minutes, somewhere 30 minutes. It will take that much of time. Come here and create a constraint template. And once that template is created, first of all, this guy will say that this resource is not correct because this would fail. This is already created in the cluster. And if I would like to create one more, it would not show that the creation, it would show that the creation can't be done because you're trying to create a privileged pod. At that point in time, it will deny us from doing that. So we can test the creation that way. So these were two things. Let me see anything else. At present, the older ones where rules are not applied, the compliances are showing all green. After some time, the new resource group which we have added, that rule will also come up here and it should show non-compliant because privileged pod is running inside that particular cluster in development namespace where we had mentioned that development namespace can't have pods with privileged access. That was one of the rules in that policy. So multiple were there, 5 different stuffs were there in that policy. Either of the things matches, it should go ahead and fail it. So that's the beauty of it. So I fear that was the content which I wanted to cover today. Any questions if we have, we can certainly pick up. So one question from Krishnendu. So rules what you created only applicable if we only use Calico. Please give some details. So you will not be able to apply the rules if Calico is not existing in the cluster. Okay, Krishnendu, when you are creating the cluster, if you are not choosing, you're choosing none in the networking section in the network policy, then you will not be able to create kind network policy in your cluster. Because I chose this, I was able to create kind network policy. And Azure network policies are not compatible with Kubernetes. They would only work with Azure resource manager stuffs. And that's the reason I would be able to choose this. The Azure policy, which I was showing right now, that would be only chosen if we are in Azure CNI. But Calico works with both of them. Calico can be chosen for Azure CNI and Kubernetes. I have been using Kubernetes for the last 6 years, and I'm more comfortable with network policy being implemented on the Kubernetes level so that I can version control my files and I can float it for reviews and all that stuff. So I prefer doing that. And in network policy also, you can create your custom rules and policies, and can certainly float those things for review as well. But this is something which I've not explored that much. But yes, these things are good addition from feature perspective by Azure. They are integrating their existing Kubernetes cluster and existing resources, which are there from before. Um, they are integrating it so that people don't have to learn new stuffs. But I prefer this because I've used this in on-prem. I work on different clouds, on-premises, OpenShift, and few other stuffs as well. So for me, Calico becomes a common interface to do the stuffs. So I prefer doing this. What should we use for production? Both are equally good, guys. It's not like this is lacking something. Whichever your team can learn. See, these policies would be written in a different format. Azure policies are written in a different format, right? The ARM template and all. If your team is good enough in creating those, you can go ahead and do that. We normally for Calico, then we need to know YAML. So it entirely depends on what skill set you have as well. Can we consider ingress and external DNS with Azure DNS zones? Yes, you can do that as well. You can certainly consider that as well. There was one more question before to that. What was it? How can we scan containers and pods if it is container? For that, Praveen, you will have to scan the images. So security aspect has two more aspects. OS level hardening I have not covered, and container image scanning I have not covered. Azure Container Registry is one of the services of Microsoft Azure, in which they have provision of scanning images. So you can upload your image to Azure Container Registry and you can scan for vulnerabilities and issues in it. So that can be done, but that would be image scanning. And then you have tools like Kubebench and all, which would go ahead and validate if your operating system is strong enough so that it doesn't give provisions for the intruders to get into your cluster, just like that. So hardening your operating system is also one of the aspects. So network hardening, user authentication and authorization, image scanning, and OS hardening. There are actual 4 pillars for it. So Jendran, if you are choosing some wrong configuration on the network, later modifying will not be, it would be a problem. You can't modify the network once resources are created in it. So you will say, I want to change the subnet and all. No, you won't be able to do that. Enabling, disabling stuff's possible. You want to enable some features like add-on features. Networking is not an add-on feature that will switch off and on, right? So that's not possible to do that. Yeah, so just to be on the safer side, we select the /16 subnets so that we don't short of IP address. We are not short of the IP addresses, and we are able to use the entire range. So normally we go with that /16 subnet. Bigger the range, you are safer for future. Automating all the processes, deploying and everything. We use Azure DevOps for doing it. Other tools also can be used, but I prefer doing it with Azure DevOps. AKS and Azure DevOps gel really well together. So scanning is anyways automated. OS hardening, Kubebench, execution needs to be automated. Network policy files you check in, it will go ahead and apply that into the cluster with a CI/CD pipeline. Or you are creating Azure policies with ARM templates, you go ahead and set up a CI/CD pipeline to deploy that into your cluster, apply that into your cluster. So everything is like ARM template or JSON or the YAML file. So it's just like how you have infrastructure as a code, you can say now security is as a code for us. We can go ahead and apply that on our existing resources. Any other tools also can be used, but Azure DevOps is something which is good. Secrets, best practice can't be anything apart from Azure Key Vault. Secrets are in Kubernetes, you know that how the secrets are encoded. So decoding it would not be a big challenge, right? If someone has access to the secret. That's a reason when Key Vault and all were not there, we used to use normal vault tools. But now Azure has Azure Key Vault, so we keep our secrets in Azure Key Vault and we integrate that with our Kubernetes cluster. Alerts, for creating alerts. For creating alerts, we have Azure monitors and that can be used. We can integrate Azure Log Analytics and Monitor for logging and monitoring. That is one of the biggest things. While creating itself, you can do it. In the integration section, you have this container monitoring. So you can use this for performance monitoring, applications health monitoring, clusters health monitoring. Everything can be monitored from a single place. And if you want to raise alerts and all, you can do that. And you can even tie that up with your CI/CD pipeline with inclusion of gates in your CI/CD pipeline, saying that if alert is there, which is critical in last 2 hours in my cluster, then I'll not go ahead and deploy it. That automation can be done. Yes, Sangram. In the real time, no one sits and creates AKS cluster like this. Terraform is very good. And I also prefer using Terraform. Terraform is like one of my favorite tools, which I use. So I use Terraform for creating AKS cluster. And certainly it supports with all the add-on features, everything it supports. So you can use that. For OS hardening, you're asking for, let me see if AKS Cube Bench something is there handy, then I'll surely provide.
While people are here, you can also provide go to the survey link and please provide the feedback of this session and also let us know what kind of other sessions which you prefer as well there. And do check in to be connected with us. And I have posted the LinkedIn link as well. Just make sure that you're part of that group because we generally interact with the group through the LinkedIn post. So please make sure you're there. Go ahead, Mamta. I think you were sharing something.
Sorry, Vivek, one thing didn't work out today.
There are a couple of
Didn't work
more
out.
questions.
I have a question related to admin controller. Yeah, Raja, please post your question.
You can also unmute. There is
Uh,
unmute button there for people who are there. I've made sure that everybody have that access now. So please go ahead and unmute and ask questions directly to Mamta.
Thank you, everybody. Raja Mukherjee this side. Sorry, I joined a bit late on this session, but anyway, I catch up bit. Still, I catch up. I have a question regarding to the port security policies and the admission controller. So I don't know that in the Azure Kubernetes clusters, right? Are you still using port security policies because it has been deprecated as of now? And if the admission controller is implemented, then how does it is implemented and how does the rollback access control is implemented? That is one question. And the other question is that it can be
demo
sometime
today.
possible. Sorry.
That is what we showed in the demo today, how we would be doing that.
Oh, I then missed one. Okay. Anyway, then I think
so you can run through the video. The first part of it was that the first section which we started was that.
Okay. The second questions I have is that sometime it might be possible. I don't know that how the Azure works, but if the Azure cluster is a shared cluster, okay, and if two customers or two tenants are using the shared cluster, they do not have a dedicated cluster. Then how does the network security policies is being segregated within the shared cluster?
See, when you have multiple clients using the same cluster, we give them dedicated namespaces because we can't allow one customer to see the workload of the other customer, right? They should have an isolation. And these network policies are applied on the namespace level. So the last section which we were doing, the last piece which we wrote in our file, if you would have noticed, I mentioned that if the traffic comes from development namespace, then only allow. And we tried communicating from production namespace and that didn't work out. So even if our customers are using the same shared cluster, but we would give them two different namespaces, we have to segregate their workloads. We can't keep everyone together in one namespace. Hopefully that you understand, right? Once we have segregated in namespaces, you can apply namespace level selectors and you can limit their traffic coming from other namespaces. You don't allow them. So in that ways, you can secure them within their namespaces.
Okay. Thank you.
That
Hi,
was the
am
last
I audible?
section which we covered.
Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So thank you for such a really good session. Question from my side is with respect to when we say that this is exposed on internet. Yeah. So in that case, what will be the best practice to handle the authentication, because the users might not be available in the AD, yeah, and there will be thousands or lakhs of users, millions of users. How do that is handled in this scenario?
You are saying application exposed to the external world. That is your question related to.
Yes, yes, that's right.
So application, so you people are getting confused with two things. One is data plane, one is control plane. RBAC comes in control plane. We are interacting with kubectl in that. Our normal users, suppose I'm hosting a website like Microsoft.com. You will browse Microsoft.com. You will not go and execute kubectl command, right? So RBAC will come in that. When you are trying to reach my application, which is running like in Microsoft.com, I have several other ways of um, like saving myself or safeguarding myself, I would say, like in HTTPS traffics can be there instead of HTTP traffic. I can have layer 7 load balancers, which will actually receive the traffic, and I can have certificates on them. And then if they are valid requests, then only I send that to the pod. So those things can be incorporated. We can have certificates and all in place. And in case we are using any service mesh and all, then we can try many more things out of that. There is a little bit more policing you can do, and security can be implemented in a many more detailed level. That's the basic thing which we can do, like HTTP and HTTPS traffic, certificates and all we can put and secure our cluster. So control plane is different, data plane is different. When you're accessing the application, you are sending data plane packet. Your role is not there in that. It's not that role-based access. You are not having any role in the cluster. You are not a user in the cluster. You are nowhere, like anyone can browse my application from outside, right?
Okay, yeah, agree. And one more question is with respect to, sorry,
Mamta, Rajan side.
Yeah, Raja.
Yeah, I just have one follow-up question regarding the control plane and data plane. Means I do understand, might be a basic questions, but still I want to understand from organization perspective, because everyone they give a different definition. So how exactly the control plane differs from data plane from the technical standpoint? Just to give more insight on that, does it mean that when an application, when a user is talking to the applications, so can I say that the data access layer and the business access layer, they are in the data plane, that is the data plane of the service tenancy, and within the control plane, you normally have the perimeter level device access control, like the load balancers, like the firewall or the subnets. Can you differentiate like that way from Microsoft standpoint, or it is pretty same from the definition standpoint?
See, when I say control plane, whatever communication you do with the cluster, every communication happens with the API server. I'll just go ahead and share my screen. I just realized I'm sitting and it's not visible. Sorry. Hopefully you people can see my screen, right? Raja, can you just confirm that?
Yeah, I can see that.
So whatever communication you do with API server, this guy is single communication point for the cluster. Even though in AKS, this is invisible to us, but whenever you are executing kubectl command or you're logging in from any other dashboard of Kubernetes, anywhere you log in, you normally log into the API server. Whatever communication happens from master to the worker, and this communication is designated as control. It is for creating, it is for deleting, it is for editing resources. A resource can be a network policy, a resource can be an application, a resource can be a role, a resource can be a role binding also. So all those actions happen here. The data is maintained in the HCD, the roles are created here and kept it. But when I'm saying data plane, now if I'm running a website of xyz.com here, whoever tries to log in, that application would be coming from here, right? It would be coming via load balancer. So I will not say that load balancer to pod traffic is a control plane traffic. I can't even say that. You mentioned one of this as your points, right? That load balancer to the pod. This is also
Right.
data plane traffic only. Because the person is accessing my application. Now, this application is talking to another application. Pod 1 is talking to, say, pod 2. This is the database pod. Your service, some connection request has come and I need to access some data from the database and respond back. This is data plane traffic. This network.
Question from my side is the way we have the containers, pods, and nodes.
People are speaking at a time. Just hold on, guys. Raja, your question is answered. Did you get this?
Yeah, I got the questions, but what I'm trying to understand is that as you've given the example of an application like xyz.com, okay. So if it is an internet-facing applications or an internal applications, but the application is deployed on the AKS clusters. So does the users will directly land up to the xyz.com on the data plane, or their authentication and authorization will be validated by the AD, which will be on the left-hand side on the API server?
No, they will not go to AD. They will directly come here. Or you have some, like in my application, you have some login credentials, then that is different. That is your app's login credentials. I have given your LinkedIn-based login. That is my app's login. That will never go this side. This Azure AD and these authentication, what we talked is for users, those who are actually interacting with the cluster for creating resources or implementing something in the cluster. They are not users of the cluster, okay?
So you mean to say they are the operational users who are creating the resources in the cluster?
Team, our dev team, our test team, our say prod team, whatever teams are there, those guys, managers, SREs, they would have a role. It's not this user, the external user. We were not talking about that user.
Okay, that means the external users have no clue of the backend control plane service tenancy they have on your environment.
Now, tell me, Raja, if your application was running on a virtual machine, okay? Till today, your application is running on virtual machine. Your team is there. Are you not creating roles in Azure AD and giving them access that this guy is a virtual machine administrator or something like that? You people do that, right?
Yeah, we do that. Yeah.
Now, as Mamta, I am browsing your application. Do you add me in Azure AD?
Yeah, we have to use because that as per the user principles, we have to use that what roles you have and what type of activity you can do on that particular.
I am a user of application. You have opened, say, swiggy.com. I am booking food. That time you will authenticate me on the app level or you will add me in Azure Active Directory.
No, if it is an external users, then probably it will be on the app level, but not
Your
on the.
question you have only answered. Application, instead of running in a virtual machine, dear, is now running in a pod. No other difference is there.
Okay,
Got
got
it?
it.
You
Yeah,
answered your question.
yeah. So from the user perspective, you are making the segregations. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mamta.
Bindu, I'll come to you. Just give me 1 minute. I'll come
Okay.
to you. I'll just go to Dinesh and I'll come back to you. Yeah, Dinesh.
In case we are doing some control operations, like you said, right, creating, editing, or deleting something in the API server level, is it captured in the audit log or is it push that notification to the super admin?
No.
Let's see.
Yes, it can be.
Sorry,
I don't.
why? Okay.
No, it's not my voice. I don't know who's speaking at the back end. There's some other lady speaking. So I also got astonished. How come I'm not answering? But yes, no is coming. Okay. So yes, logs are generated. You can have them in the audit logs as well. And you can have logging on the Kubernetes level as well. If you are integrating with Active Directory, you will have audit logs as well. You can see over there who did what action. You would be able to figure out. You can want to generate alerts. You have denied some action and again that action has been done, then those things also can be incorporated.
Okay. And what about the notification configuration, these control operations? In case I am a super admin, I want to know who are doing which operation. I want an email alert. Is it possible?
Yes, why not? See, why you guys are thinking now, if you have your application running in virtual machine, if someone is doing an invalid operation on the virtual machine, like I go and try to remove your disk, you get a notification. If I'm not allowed to do that, you get a notification now for doing it. Email can come, right? So same thing here as well. It's not different. It's just that application is not running in virtual machine. It is running inside a pod. And my worker nodes are nothing but VM only. So whatever actions I'm doing here, for that also we can generate. That is that we have to code it. We will have to create such notifications and alerts and have it in place. It would behave the way.
Okay.
So nothing is different. Kubernetes is not anything that weird that it will not be able to handle it. That integration. You can certainly do that.
Yeah, thanks, Mamta. What a nice session.
No issue. Thank you.
Hi, Mamta. Though this is a very basic question, but the way we have hierarchy, like containers and then
You have logged in
pods
from
and all.
places, is it? Your voice is echoing. Who is asking the question? It's not Krishnendu. Who is it? Can you just
Manish. It is Manish. Is it?
Okay, Manish. Okay. Manish, just give me 1 minute. Krishnendu was asking the question. I had put him on hold. I'll come to you in a minute, okay?
Thank you,
Oh.
Mamta.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Krishnendu.
Mamta. Yeah. So my question is, what is actually service mesh? Means, is it Calico is part of that, or the network policies from Azure is part of that? Could you please elaborate?
Service mesh is a very huge concept, Krishnendu. It does a lot of things. It does telemetry, it does observability, it does network policies, a lot of things it can do. It only depends what you want to explore.
So
Calico implements those things, and there are a lot of other tools as well, like Cilium is also there, which does that. XQ is there, Console is there. There are a number of service mesh in the market.
okay, so
And
I would say it's a
Mhm.
framework or concept, right? That can be implemented in
Service mesh is a
multiple.
common terminology.
Okay.
Like if I say CI/CD pipeline, it's a
Mhm.
terminology, right? Azure
Correct.
DevOps also does that. Jenkins also can do
Hmm.
that. Hudson can do that. It's like
Exactly.
that. Service mesh is a concept
Okay. Okay.
which all these tools can implement.
Okay.
They are normally used for communication across pods when we have it. We want to policy those packets. We want to like see what is going there. You can check them, and you can keep an eye on the entire network, observe the what's happening. That's the reason we use it. If you ask me tomorrow, Mamta, how many times your front end and back end are talking, I would need the dumps of the packet, right? How many times communication happened? All those things can be done in that.
Okay. Got it, Mamta. Thank you.
Yeah, Manish, tell me.
Yeah, thank you. So with respect to the namespaces, the way we have normally the hierarchy of objects. So how namespaces, because it's a specific to a particular user or role, right? So how that is based, I mean, how that is
Particular
part of this
user,
object model.
why did you feel it is specific to a user or role? Like I have a cluster which I want to use for dev team as well and test team as well. I'm making this as an environment. Dev workloads will run, all pods of dev workloads will run, and here test workloads will also run. Namespace is just a virtual division of the cluster, virtually dividing in multiple concepts. Like end of the day, I have worker node 1 and worker node 2. This has say 2 virtual CPU, 4 GB RAM. This has say 2 virtual CPU, 4 GB RAM. For just left after OS and all, this much is left. So capacity of my applications, like how much I can run on them. 4 virtual CPU, 8 GB RAM is my worker nodes capacity. Out of this, I would be dividing some amount of capacity for my dev team and some amount of capacity for my test team. I would say that dev team at no point in time should go beyond 1 virtual CPU and 4 GB RAM. And test team should not go beyond 2 virtual CPU and 2 GB RAM, for example. Screen is shared, right? Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
So this is the capacity which dev workload can use in the cluster. That means when we are creating brown pods like this, it could be scaled one, it could be separate pods. In the entire cluster spread across this, it could be on worker node 1, I'm using 0.25 and 0.25 virtual CPU, and in worker node, I'm using 0.25 virtual CPU. Totally, I'm using just 0.75 virtual CPU. This should be within this limit. So what am I limiting on the namespace level? I'm limiting resources. I'm limiting resources. This is called as resource quota. On a namespace level, I can define a resource quota and limit amount of resources my applications can use in that cluster. This limitation I can do. Second limitation is action. Who can do what? Now, I would say Manish is my developer, and say Krishna, I'm writing instead of Krishnendu. Krishna is my test team guy. When Krishna logs in, I don't want him to see this. It should be hidden. When Manish logs in, I don't want to show any test workload. I don't want Manish to execute any action on it. If he lists also, he can't list anything. He would only be able to list things which are there in dev. Deleting, creating, editing, whatever he can do, he can only do it in the dev. So what did I limit? I limited action. Action for a user or for a group of users, like in dev group, I kept Manish, I keep Maithili, I keep Raja. I'm keeping several users, and I'll say group. This group can belongs and it would be able to do so and so action. This is called as RBAC, which we were seeing. So it's just not user and group. Don't think that namespace is just limiting that. Namespace is limiting a visibility of a workload for a specific user, action for a specific user, plus it limits the resources as well. So it is virtual division of a cluster, logically dividing a cluster
Yeah,
into.
makes sense. So now just extending further, if I have multi-tenant.
Hmm. Sorry, your voice went off, Manish. You're speaking, then others can hear him.
No, his question is what about if it is having a multi-tenant?
I think he is not audible to us.
So here also we have multiple tenants only, right? We can have like multiple tenants also. It would work the same way only. What is different in that? What you're expecting? What behavior do you feel it would be different? Shiva's mic who is creating some noise. I'm not sure. Vivek, he is not audible, I think.
So Mamta,
Yeah.
by the
Yeah,
time he comes back, Raja Mukherjee this side.
yeah,
Follow-up
yeah.
question: resource quota and action quota. So does the
Action quota.
definition?
Say
Yeah,
resource quota and RBAC. Don't say action quota.
yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that does the definition and the definition of all these policy setting will be defined in RBAC, that is role-based access control, or it will be defined in namespace?
So when we created kind role, you saw that file or you were not there that time. When we created a kind role, we told this role is applicable. We gave a name for the role, say role reader. It is applicable on this namespace. You specified a namespace dev. So reader role is applicable to dev namespace. And what reader role can do? I can give API groups. I can say pod for this person would be able to do pod and he would be able to do edit of pod. He would be able to do create of pod. You are giving actions. So whoever, sorry, I gave reader role. So I should have just done get action. So anyone who becomes reader, belongs to the reader role in dev namespace will be able to do kubectl get pods that I'm doing. So here I'm tying a role to a namespace, right?
Correct.
If you don't give this, it will not allow you to execute this file. There are roles on the cluster level as well, but the keyword for this would be cluster role. You will create kind cluster role, which cluster administrators would be able to create it. So some roles can be like in every namespace, if I'm implementing similar roles, then I can form a cluster role and apply it on the cluster so that inheritance will be there for that, right? So that can be applied to all the namespaces. Some would have very specific roles to be defined for specific namespaces, then create a role on the namespace level and apply it on that. Role is a resource which can belong to a namespace.
Okay. Okay.
The scope of it is a namespace.
Do we have any more questions?
Hello, hello.
Yes.
Yes, Anu.
Ram here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So my question was: does pods connect to backend private VNet for accessing like secure database or my for an hybrid connection architecture where I have some database on-prem and I want to connect pods to that hybrid connection using express route. So does that uses the same VNet it was used to create the AKS, or I have to use a different endpoint to integrate?
So you have a virtual network in which you have your worker nodes at present. A pod wants to communicate
To a backend database which resides in my.
Which is in a different VNet, right? You're saying?
Yeah, it's a different VNet. It's on my on-prem network. This is which is connected to the Azure using Express route. This is a hybrid situation.
So now you tell me, if at present your application is running in a virtual machine and I ask you the same question, how it works?
Now my application is running on my virtual machine and it's connected to the SQL server on my on-prem database. Then I connect through it to Express route. If there is a requirement for point-to-site VPN or site-to-site VPN, that I will use, but my connection is currently there with Express route, so I use Express route to connect to that SQL server, right? And
Correct.
then I use my NIC and I use my NSG rules to do that such things, whatever security rules I will apply on the network level. Now my question is, when I'm introducing a container, I have seen in Azure App Service also, if you want to integrate to the backend VM in a private VNet, you have to do a VNet integration.
Correct. So here, when the packet goes out, right,
So
you will have to do that VNet integration. That is one thing. Second, when the container or the pod is talking, packet has to go out. It comes to the bridge. And from there, it comes to the Calico pod. It overwrites and when it sends out, that time this IP would be mentioned. If it is within the same network, IP forwarding, if you enable, that would work. But if it's not in that network, then for reaching that, this Calico takes an action, and that encapsulation, what happens, that would rectify this. So this Calico pod, that is the reason we call it as CNI, that handles this responsibility, that it would overlap or it will like encapsulate the IP. This IP is on a different network altogether, right? So network integration has to be done, and the packet would go how it goes from a virtual machine. From this point, it becomes like a VM to a VM communication, because the packet which came from the container is already encapsulated. So you don't realize that the packet has come from the pod and then I'm giving it to the virtual machine. How a VM in one network to a VM in another network would communicate, it would communicate exact the same thing. There it will not be any difference.
Okay, no,
when the packet came out from the virtual machine, it's like a packet coming from the VM itself.
Okay, understood. My question was actually means I was looking for, because if you raise a container for an app service, you have to reserve a subnet, right? You have to reserve a subnet where you can integrate the app service. The app service is running on a virtual network that is managed by Azure, means managed by Microsoft. That is not managed by us. But if you want to integrate that with with your network, with your private VNet, then you have to reserve a subnet. Say I reserve a subnet for 4 machines, or maybe an IP with /28 or /30. Anyway, I reserved an IP that range of 15 to 20, and then I connect that subnet to my Azure App Service, and then I reroute the packets using my routing tables or my route tables. I do that. So that type
your
of
user-defined routes and all those things will come into picture. The same way you will do it.
Okay, so it's the same way, and subnet. I have to book the subnet for that also. I have to be aware that if I do this type of things, I have to have a subnet different to connect to my VNet and all this, right?
So here, when we took that Azure CNI networking, from the VNet, a subnet was being taken and the IPs were assigned to the pod directly, right? That subnet should not overlap with your on-prem subnet. If that would overlap, it will not be able to talk now.
That's right. It will not able to. Yeah, but what I was thinking is that, do I have to specifically book or book any subnet other than the one that is used to create the tickets?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, so that was I was up to, because in app service you have to do such things because it's the same container. So that in theory it works the same. So therefore I asked, Kubernetes and containers are the same thing.
Yeah, Mamta.
Yeah. Who's this?
Krishnendu.
Yeah, Krishnendu.
From your experience, what is your opinion to use database into the pod, or else it should be remain into the Azure itself? Azure do it with some different security.
It depends on management part of it. If you're deploying it inside the pod, you have to manage it well. Your team should be good enough to manage it well. You can use stateful. See, containers, people think they are just meant for stateless applications. That's not the case. It's meant for stateful applications as well. Stateful application can also run, but when these days people don't want to spend there so much of time in management, and that's the reason we are picking up managed services, right? So if you tell me, Mamta, there is SQL Server, you want to run it as a pod, or you want to take Azure SQL as a service option, then I'll opt Azure SQL as a service and integrate AKS with Azure SQL, and I will simplify my life because if I'm managing it within the pod, the management part is more, right? If things go wrong, I would be handling the high availability, downtime, all those things would be difficult.
Yeah, because maintaining the persistence, it bit typical into the AKS, right?
So how, if you have several SQL servers, managing in a virtual machine was difficult, and that's the reason people moved on to managed services. If you run them in a pod also, they are equally difficult. It's not that containers are not meant for stateful application. It's that stateful applications are a little bit complicated to manage than stateless.
Yeah, exactly. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Sangram, you have a question. I see your hand is raised. Nope.
Mamta, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Manish, we lost your voice in between, so I was calling out for you. I didn't know you were able to hear something.
No issues. So just extending the previous discussion with respect to the SQL. So can we use endpoints, SQL endpoints, which can be make it trusted and can be better to use with the container, or it's not a
same way here also you would have managed SQL also you use, or anything you can have those trusted IPs and everything, you can write it and you can accept packets only from there. That can be done. How you do it? See guys, application running in a VM and application running in a Kubernetes cluster is not so different. Everyone is like thinking that it's a very difficult stuff or something. I'm not sure about it. What's the mindset? It's just that creating that containerized application is difficult. Once that creation of that containerized application, the image has been done, then Kubernetes has a lot of intelligence, how we can manage like auto scaling. Every feature is there in it. You name any feature that you will say, Mamta, I can do this in a VM. I would say, yes, we can do it in Kubernetes as well. It's nothing that we can't do it over here. So whitelisting specific IPs, allowing from a specific port number, everything can be done as it is, how you do it. You want to connect to the backend, I can say from AKS to my... Sorry?
Just to clarify, so every such firewall and those are at the pod level, right? Or not at
you
the
can
container
do on the pod level, you can do on the node level. Both the places you can implement.
Oh,
Virtual
okay.
machines are there, right? Worker nodes. From where the traffic is coming. You can specify in your Azure SQL what would be the subnet range of your Kubernetes cluster from which you can accept the packet at your backend. That options, when you go and create the SQL server, you would find that there is an option to enable that as well, where you can specify the subnet range. Here, you would be specifying your Kubernetes cluster subnet range.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Thank you.
I think we are almost done over time.
Yeah, sorry.
So is there any questions? If there are no questions, even if you have any questions, do reach out to Mamta. She is available on LinkedIn and Twitter. So do reach out to her, and also join our LinkedIn group so that if you have questions, just post it there. We can ask Mamta to get in there and answer it for you. So that's something which we can definitely enable. Um, just before we close this session, I just want to go through a couple of things. Definitely do check in. You get a lot of information from our end on different workshops we do and different kind of sessions we do, and do provide surveys. It will definitely help us, and do join Azure Developer League. This is something which is going on. There is a lot of hackathons, there is a lot of learning, cloud skill challenge, and more workshops like these are enabled out there. So do join in. Any questions? Else we can close the day. No questions?
Yeah, I think I'll take the closing note as a request from all of us. If the recording will be available, then that will be very nice.
Yes, it will take 48 hours to upload this recording, and thanks to Mamta for driving this session. Thank you very much. I know it's like, you've been talking for almost 3 hours now. You definitely need a break now. Thank you very much, Mamta. We are really
And
grateful.
request, sorry, and it also request if you can give the LinkedIn ID for this particular Azure that you have.
You can see.
She
I
posted. She posted on this
Yeah,
one.
I
Yeah, she has
posted that.
posted for her ID. Okay.
And for rest of the things, I've actually curated the links. I'm anyways posting it again so that you can also take a look at it.